There are a lot of things going wrong in Boulder right now, but they're all fixable. It's just a matter of if we're wanting to fix these things.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Joining me today is a Colorado legend, left the program as one of the leadingest tackles in program history, won a title with the program, played in the NFL for almost all of my life, it feels like. Chad Brown. Chad, I appreciate, not to age you, apologies there, but you just accomplished so much in the football world, so I appreciate you hopping on and talking some Colorado ball.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on, and look forward to talking about the Buffs. It's always a good conversation.
Yeah, I think Colorado, obviously a very polarizing program over the past few years because of the Deion Sanders era experiment, if you will. And I think we saw the program reach its highs last year, 9-4, Heisman winner, Davey O'Brien winner, and Shedeur Sanders. And a lot of things were going right. And all offseason, we were told that this team is better than last year's team. It's more complete. Obviously, it doesn't have the stars. And expect them to continue to trend upwards, if you will. And we haven't seen that, right? They've been struggling. And I think there's a clear problem or problems with the program in terms of how they build the roster, how they sort of, I think the coaching staff could use a little bit of a tune-up, if you will. And so I wanted to get your perspective. Colorado's sitting at 3-6 right now. They need to win out to win a bowl game, but I feel like a bowl game feels so distant right now. I feel like we're taking it week by week just to get the vibes. How do you perceive Colorado right now? And do you think all of this is fixable?
Well, fixable this year? I don't think it's fixable this year. You touched on a number of different things there. In the end, the bets they made on some transfers and the bets they made on bringing these guys into the program, all those clearly have not paid off. And so there's a talent deficiency between the Buffs and the top teams in the Big 12, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks by the scores and the differences on both offense and defense. This goes back in some ways to some structural issues that I see. If you are a Hall of Fame defensive back like Coach Prime was, I think it's inevitable that you look at football from the outside in. But in the end, football is won from the inside out. And what I mean by that is on defense, defensive line, and those guys are critically important. On the offensive line. And so when you build from the outside in, yes, you got talented cornerbacks, you got talented wide receivers. But if the quarterback doesn't get protection, he can't get the ball to those talented wide receivers. If the quarterback doesn't have the support of a run game, well, then life is more difficult for that quarterback. So that's the issue when you build from the outside in. You got the skill, but you don't have the beef up front to be able to distribute the ball to those skilled guys. And as we've seen repeatedly since Coach Prime took over the Colorado Buffaloes, our ability to stop a running quarterback just does not exist. And that typically starts with the defensive line. Guys who can eat up blocks, guys who can two-gap, guys who make life easier for their linebackers to tackle a running quarterback. So just some basic structural issues with how the roster has been constructed and some of these bets on transfers and things like that. So I think that's certainly been a longstanding issue. But as far as this year goes, obviously the connection between the quarterback and the play caller hasn't really flourished this year. We've got a situation where we've now played multiple quarterbacks in multiple games. That's never good for anybody. So I don't necessarily think Coach Prime was wrong for trying to find a solution. But within that, Caden Salter appeared to be robbed of some of his confidence for multiple games. He even talked about that publicly in press conferences. Right. So where are we? What are we doing? And then let's add in some more to all of this. Our coach missed the majority of the summer and the spring with bladder cancer. So, I mean, coaching major college football is difficult enough in itself.
Mhm.
if you are completely healthy, even if you don't have one thing go wrong with you physically during the course of the season, if you never get sick, it's a difficult enough job. But now to have the bladder cancer, miss all that time there, and then the blood clot issues during the season, which, apparently were so painful that was, it was hard for him to stand up and participate in things. You bring all those things together, you get a season like we've got going right now. A very
Mhm.
disappointing season, a season that feels lost from a Colorado Buffaloes fan standpoint.
Right. And I think the hard part too is like you don't want to blame Deion Sanders because obviously like you can't control any of the health aspects, but there's certain things that I think are controllable. And I don't want to speak for you, Chad, at all, but like I'm of the mindset that I think he could have a lot of success here in Boulder. Right. We saw a glimpse of it last year. They went 9-4. But I do think that he needs to adjust a few things he does. And I think this is what makes it fixable is there's solutions out there that can be implemented, right? We're not at a point where look at Florida, where it was Billy Napier and it's kind of like, okay, the same thing year 5 or year 4, whatever it was for him. We're witnessing game management problems. We're witnessing offensive play calling issues, and the team's just not good, right? That's not been the case for Deion Sanders. I think there's fixable issues, and I put together somewhat of like a 5-step plan, if you will, and I wanted to run it by you. So first step is you have to commit to recruiting, right? I think with his brand and with his personality, he should probably be able to put together a top 15 recruiting class every year if he goes all in. So that means you're not just waiting for the transfer portal to load up, right? You're recruiting guys early. You're taking at home visits, which I know he has yet to do. I have a little theory called the Prime 21, where if he just like picked 21 visits to make in the year, like those recruits would feel quite special, and it would feel like a special sort of thing. Like Deion Sanders only visits 21 people a year, and I'm one of those recruits, right? I feel like that would help. The transfer portal, I think it cannot be like the main source of roster building. I think it's meant to fill holes. I talked about Ohio State a lot last year, obviously a very different money stature, but Ohio State plugged in Caleb Downs, they plugged in Will Howard. Majority of the other guys were homegrown and home developed, right? And I think Colorado needs to do a better job of giving themselves the chance to build those guys up and develop them, right? Jordan Seaton is a prime example of that. Julian Lewis, Omarion Miller, those guys are all guys that they recruited and are going to continue to develop and have at least shown potential like Julian Lewis or have turned into stars like Miller and Seaton. The next step is, and this is the hard part, and this is the human aspect of coaching or sports. I mean, you have to change up the coaching staff. I think you do. I think you have to clean house, at least have handful of positions, and we'll love to get your input on as well. I just feel part about coaching and football is you're doing everything, right? You're talking about right? Quarterback container, right? But you also have to improve. And does he have the right people around him to help him elevate this program? What do you think about the coaching aspect of it?
Okay, you were cut out a bit there. I think I caught the first 3 points.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Quick run. Go. Not leaning the portal much, and then also the coaching staff to put people around him to help him succeed more.
Okay, home visits. It just seems like a mandatory. I don't understand the thought that I don't do home visits. Nick Saban did home visits. There's video of Nick Saban doing the cha-cha slide in some recruits' living room.
Yeah.
There's just certain things as a college coach that you Saban going into recruits' houses and doing the cha-cha slide in their living room. So if Nick Saban, the greatest college coach of all time, with a tremendous track record, is going to show up at recruits' house, I think Coach Prime should do the same thing. As far as the portal, I think the portal can be used like it is done in the NFL as a free agency thing. You need a spot or hole to fill. That's great. But to build your team in that way, you can't build a team. You go out, if you're going to build your team that way, you don't end up with a team. You end up with a band of mercenaries, the guys who are there for whatever various reasons. They didn't pan out at their previous place. They were chasing more dollars, not a better playing situation. They wanted to have their social media handle on the back of their practice jersey. All these other things that are separate from wanting to be a Colorado Buffalo. What about that? That's why you're supposed to come and be a Colorado Buffalo, because I can't wait to be a Buffalo. I want to be a part of that tradition. I want to run out behind Ralphie. I want to do all those things. When you get a team of transfers, you get guys who are there for reasons other than primarily wanting to be a Colorado Buffalo. It makes the teamwork and it makes the team building process more difficult when you've got 60 new guys every year. That's almost impossible to build a cohesive unit with that structure. And then the third thing we talked about, the staff. Clearly the play calling on both sides of the ball has left some things to be desired. So I know Prime does this interesting thing where he demotes people from responsibilities but doesn't fire them. So there's a sense of loyalty there, but this is now the fourth time in 6 years as a head coach that Coach Prime has demoted a play caller. So what's the pre-interview process like? How well are these guys being vetted for these opportunities if now 4 times in 6 years you've had to demote a play caller? That's an unfortunate track record there where, clearly you guys aren't on the same page and they're not delivering the performance that you are or have been expecting. So there's clearly a disconnect there. As far as the Marshall Faulks and the Warren Sapps and all that, just as being a great NFL player is different than being a broadcaster, being a great NFL football player doesn't necessarily make you a great coach. I'm not saying those guys aren't great coaches. I'm not involved enough to know that, but the thought that I can bring in a Hall of Fame player and suddenly he's a great coach, that's a very different skill set. It's a very different, because, for Terrell Owens to come in and try to coach up the wide receivers, he's one of the most talented human beings to ever play the wide receiver position. What are you going to teach this kid who does not have the same level of talent you have, who has to get by on other things than the pure talent of it all? So I understand that the glitz and the glam and the splash of some of these guys, but Nick Saban certainly excelled, and his coaching staffs have gone on to become great head coaches all around college football, and those guys weren't NFL Hall of Famers. There is a path to building a great staff. That means hiring great coaches, not due to wear gold jackets.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part too, that he's going to have to come to terms with, is you can't just like pair together a bunch of great football players and be like, okay, we have so much knowledge in here. I think they said they have 300 years or 200 years of NFL experience. And it's like, okay, Coach Pecco, right? He's fresh out of the NFL. I think he played a couple of years ago, right? Has never coached. And now he's like, it's not even like he's an analyst. He is a position coach. And like, it's such a big ask of him to be like, okay, use all of your NFL experience and just teach all of these guys how to do everything how you did it. That just doesn't, like, Chad played 15 years in the NFL. If Chad met up with me at 5'7" on a good day and said, okay, Kevin, I'm going to coach you to be the best linebacker I could be, that doesn't work. I'm not built to be a linebacker. I am not Chad Brown. That is just how it doesn't work that way, right? And then the two last key points that I had of this rebuild, or steps, if you will, finding the identity early and often in the offseason, right? I think the past, and both years that Deion Sanders has struggled in Colorado, we've made it to like week 7 or 8, and we're talking about finding the identity. And it's like, okay, our identity needs to be established in the offseason, so that way we can like sort of emphasize that and work on that through the season and like show that, not try to find it against BYU and Iowa State and whoever else they were trying to find it against. And then the last one, and this is something that I think you would probably agree with, but I would kind of mold it around you, is you had leaders on your team. You were one of the leaders on your team. I think Colorado needs to do a better job of establishing leaders in the offseason, whether that's coach decided or player decided, right? Because you had Travis Hunter, you had Deion Sanders last year, and I've talked to players from the team, and it's like, it's easy to follow them because they're the two best players and they're doing everything right. But this year, and you hit on it earlier, Caden Salter talked about how hard it was to be a leader because he was benched. He talked about trying to grow as a leader, and we're like 7 weeks into the season. It's like, okay, you're a 5th-year senior. Like, you kind of expect that that's there already. So wanted to get your thoughts on those final steps, if you will.
Okay, well, it's going to be impossible to build an identity when it's brought up in press conferences and the head coach is like, I don't understand this identity thing. Mm-hmm. Come on, man. You know how important that is. You know what that is. And to say winning's the identity, well, you've got to have an identity to do the winning. What kind of football team are we? Are we physical and tough? Are we Are we the smarter team? Those things are built, to your point, Kevin, in the offseason. Those are things that are built in the weight room and in spring conditioning. Those are the things that are reinforced, that are kind of become mantras for the program. And so identity is critically important. Every successful team that I was on had a clear identity. Every great team that I played against had an identity. This is how we win games. This is what we hang our hat on. This is how we get to the tough times. This is how we win a one-score game. There's something there. There's a backbone. There's a belief. There's a culture. There's a conversation. There's a structure around all of that. And it may change from year to year, from team to team. You get a running quarterback in. Yeah, so now we're going to be a more physically minded team. We're going to be Bear Brockmeyer with BYU, and we're going to pummel you because that's what we do. And along the way, yeah, we'll pass the ball sometimes and we'll play some good defense, but we're just going to be the more physical team every week we show up, and that's how we're going to find ways to win games. And that's what we're going to hang our hat on when things get tough. So that's the identity piece. The leadership piece, well, that goes back to the portal piece. I grew into a leader at the Colorado Buffaloes. I was there for 5 years. I watched previous leaders come and go and took little tidbits from them. Okay, Mike Jones, I see your leadership style. Okay, Darian Hagan, I see how you lead with your skill set. And okay, Alfred Williams, I see what you do. So to take bits and pieces from those guys and incorporate that into my leadership when my opportunity came in my junior and senior year. But if you're building a team through the transfer portal, where is that years-long tutelage? Where's that process? And if you were a guy who was at some other place and now you want to bring that here, well, then now there's 30 other guys who are at some other place and want to bring that here. And now we got 30 competing voices and 30 competing things, as opposed to some kind of cohesive structure and hierarchy within the team. You've proven yourself over years within this program. You've shown that you do the right things. Therefore, you're a guy I can get behind. Not, I showed up in August, and because I played at Alabama, but I left Alabama because I never got in the field, but I was at Alabama, now I'm going to proclaim myself to be a leader here. I mean, that process just doesn't work, and it's not something that everyone can buy into. So there's some, again, the structural issues with how the program is constructed and how the roster is constructed lends itself to a lack of leadership or inability for guys to lead, because I'm new on campus. When I was a free agent and left the Pittsburgh Steelers and went to the Seattle Seahawks, that was going to be difficult for me to walk in the door and proclaim myself to be a leader. Was I one of the best players on the football team? Yeah, I was. Was I one of the highest paid players on the team? Yes, I was. But that doesn't make you a leader. People need to see that, believe that, trust in that. And that's earned over time. So if you're expecting this leadership to come out of the portal, I think you're going to have a situation where you have this year, where guys are not sure, guys are uncertain, guys are, I got benched. Can I still be a leader? That's a difficult circumstance for leadership to thrive and grow in.
Yeah, and I don't know how much Deion Sanders had been around the program this year. Obviously, he's dealing with his own career, but there was a clip of him from the past game, and he was talking about the team, and he said something along the lines of like, we don't have any alphas. Like there's no that, and that's obviously the leadership problem you were just talking about. So it's like no one's been able to sort of establish that role just because everyone's trying to figure out like, where do I fit into this hierarchy? Or like you said earlier, the mercenary aspect where it's just like, I'm here to boost my draft stock. I'm here to get out of here. This is like a 1-year rental, if you will, for me, like for my career. Like I'm here for the year, I'm out. Right? And that's not sort of the mindset that you want. Even if that is the case, you want people to be bought into the culture. And we're going to be talking about a big cultural significance about Colorado. But first, a quick break. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Supply House. If you aren't familiar with Supply House, you probably should be because they have helped me out a ton. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you got to get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items for the most trusted brands in the business. I'm a first-time homeowner. Things keep breaking. Fun part of homeownership. And guess what? Supply House has been there for me. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. There we go. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Joining me is Colorado legend Chad Browd. Chad, first of all, would never want to meet you in the A-gap. That'd be scary. Second of all, I think there's been a lot of discourse online about sort of the old Colorado, new Colorado, right? It feels very divisive. It feels very, I don't know, like not everyone's on the same page, right? And I think one of the things that people from the Colorado teams like yourself who have been a part of success and have been a part of the success that Colorado's had and are the pillars of the program, you guys have sort of noticed, and I don't want to speak for you, so feel free to hop in here. You have noticed the disconnect between the current Colorado programs and sort of the traditions. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. So you guys have noticed that, and it doesn't seem that the current regime is like valuing those as much. And although things like a fight song don't win games, they unite people, right? They give a group of 38 guys that are new something to bond over. So give me your take on the fight song sort of, I don't want to call it debacle because I don't want to demean it by any means, but give me your sort of take on the matter.
College football, of all the sports, is probably the one that is the most rooted in tradition. If you turn on NBC and you're watching the Notre Dame game, chances are they're going to show the Four Horsemen. They're going to show Newt Rockne. Yeah. You know, if you are watching a USC game, somewhere in the pregame show, they're going to show Marcus Allen. They're going to show Reggie Bush. Yeah. We embrace the past as a part of college football. The NFL continues to build newer and bigger and more awesome stadiums. Almost every year, a new stadium is revealed. I just did the Saints-Jets game out at SoFi, my first time at SoFi. It's a freaking palace. It's amazing. Yeah. What does college football do? We take the old stadium and we expand on it because we like the tradition in the old stadium. So to think that somehow you can ignore the traditions and greatness of the past in college football, and somehow the fan base, the alumni, the previous players are going to be happy and accepting of that, I think it's just short-sighted. And this latest thing about the fight song, I think it speaks to this disconnect between folks who are more recent Colorado Buffalo fans due to Coach Prime and the folks who have some previous history. Of course, everyone on social media is going to run off in their own personal direction. So it's difficult to address it all here in one brief podcast. But in the end, this conversation for me was about the amazing tradition that the fight song is, how it galvanizes the locker room together, particularly for a team that's got a bit of a band of mercenaries going from the transfer portal process of building this roster. That's something that brings people together. It's something that speaks to the hard work that it took to get there. I posted a video this week of myself talking about the fight song and Coach Brian Cabral talking about the fight song. That video was recorded in 2015. So people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're bringing this up now. How come you didn't say something before?" It's like, I recorded this in 2015. This fight song thing has been important to me for quite a while. Yes, there is going to continue to be this disconnect between the folks who have long been Colorado Buffalo fans and the folks who are acting as if Colorado did not play football until Coach Prime got there. There was a tremendous history there. Now, of course, have things been rough recently? Yeah, no doubt about that. As Coach Prime brought eyeballs and attention and money back into the program, no one could ever doubt that. I would never say he hasn't. Certainly he hasn't. But I think there's a way to embrace the new while still hold on to the traditions of the past. So in the end, I think we all want the same thing. We all want the Buffs to win. Do I want my traditions to be embraced along the way? Yeah, I do. But from the core of who I am as a Colorado Buffalo, I want the Buffs to find a way to win. I think the new Buffalo fans want that same thing. So we can quibble about some of these details as long as we're on the same page. Let's get the Buffs a winning record. Let's find them a way to win. Let's get them into a bowl game.
Right. And I think that's for the united part is everyone wants the same thing. It's just a little bit different in terms of how it's going to be there. I wanted to ask this, and this is meant to like start things, but is there a way that you think you can improve upon including yourself? And it doesn't even have to be like including like a Westbrook or the enemy or Darian Hagan or whoever to sort of help this program traditions.
I would love to see that. Obviously, Coach Prime decided Darian Hagan wasn't going to be a part of his coaching staff.
Right.
And so that did not land well with a number of, Colorado Buffalo alumni. And so while here's a massive photo of me up in the practice facility, I have yet to be embraced or asked to speak to the team or speak to the coaches about traditions or anything like that, in talking to other alumni, they have a similar scenario. Yes, you're bringing all these other guys, but no one who's been a Buffalo in the past, no one who's got this long-standing history and success with the Buffalo. So it's a bit of a disconnect for guys of my era and guys who are successful, but part of the national championship era and this current crop of coaches up there on campus.
Yeah, and I think every program honors their traditions differently and honors the past players before them. And I think a lot of the programs that I see have success are the ones that are willing to embrace like every era of that school. So even though Deion Sanders was not a part of that at all, like having a couple of you guys come and talk to the team, like that would move mountains for everyone, right? It's like you guys get to show like we reached the pinnacle here. Like this is not just some like rah, like, hey, we could all win. Like we did it. Like you are living proof that Colorado can win a championship. So it's interesting that he hasn't tapped into you guys, or even like I know Colorado hasn't like been as nationally successful recently, but a guy like LaVisca Chenault or Steven Montez or like Mustafa Johnson, who I went to high school with, right? Those are guys who are recently successful that played for Colorado that could probably lend some tutelage or lend a mentorship of the modern athlete too, right? Because I think that's also something that he values is like getting modern perspectives on things. So it's interesting. Hopefully that's something that changes down the line or is something that he's willing to at least think of. But when we come back, we're going to talk about what is next for Colorado. But first, a quick break. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Guess what, everybody? The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. It's me and Chad Brown. Chad, let's just predict the future, right? We're all really good at it. I think all of us make our living off predicting the future, right? Or at least attempting to. So what is next for Colorado? Obviously, they play West Virginia this week, and I think that's a really good opportunity for Julian Lewis to get reps and possibly get experience and maybe lead them on a run to a bowl game, right? That's sort of like the immediate future, and I think we all know that's what's at stake here. But from your perspective, what do you hope is next for Colorado in the offseason and moving forward?
Well, the thoughts you're going to go with a freshman quarterback and a new play caller, as that's been rumored, and suddenly things are going to light on fire. It doesn't feel likely.
I mean, it's a tough circumstance, especially Morgantown's a sleepy, hostile environment, and they care about Mountaineer football over there.
Yeah. I played with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so just a state over from West Virginia, I'm aware of that West Virginia fandom and how difficult of a place that is to play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this season and how things finish out. Hopefully, there is some promise for Juju about the future, and he's able to kind of get some comfort underneath himself and begin to show us why he was the recruit and why he was ranked as high as he was. Hopefully that's the case. Even better, hopefully we find ways to win games. Again, that feels unlikely, so it's really about building towards next year. And as far as next year goes, I think some of these structural things that we talked about need to be embraced. A culture / identity needs to be instituted into this program. That's, I think, a critical part of any college football program. You got kids coming in from all around the country with all different types of backgrounds and all different types of experiences. You got to ingratiate them into what it is to become a Colorado Buffalo and what the tradition is and what they're going to be involved in and the great teams of the past. There's got to be an identity piece to this thing. And then, as I talked about earlier, the focus on the offense and defensive lines. Football is won up front. Yes, it's flashy on the outside, and that's what captures our attention. That's where the highlights come from. It's very rarely we watch a highlight of an offensive line. But in the end, it's the offensive line that allows those highlights to happen. And to not recognize that is, a shortcoming of this football team right now. So if you want Julian Lewis to be successful, yes, another great receiver would be awesome. But in the end, it's the offensive line that's going to allow that quarterback and that receiver to flourish. So continue to bolster and build the offensive line and then solidify the play calling. It's been an issue as far as balance between run and pass over the last couple of years. The lack of success in the run game makes life more difficult for the offense overall. And if you don't have a run game, it's hard for you to be consistent. Even when the Buffs have had success offensively, they are in spurts. It's an occasional explosive play rather than continued drive and imposing your will upon the opponent and controlling the game and controlling the play clock and taking some kind of control of the game. Explosive plays are great, but in the end, you don't control a game with explosive play. So there's a couple of things just off the top of my head that would, I think, immediately bring a better chance for success to this team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we talked about Nick Saban a little bit earlier, and him and Coach Prime are actually, they seem to be close friends, or like the way they talk about it one another in the media. I think if I'm Coach Prime, I lean on Nick Saban. I mean, maybe offer him the defensive coordinator job, see what happens. He's probably going to say no, but worth a shot, right? But I think you lean on him to help build a staff around you, right? Nick Saban's staff, if you look at, I don't remember what year it was. I want to say 2020 or 2019 maybe, when he had it was like Dan Lanning, Billy Napier, Mike Loxley, like Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiff, pretty much every head coach in college football was on that staff, it felt like. And so I feel like Nick Saban knows a thing or two about building staffs out, right? So if I'm Deion Sanders, I'd probably lean on that and be like, okay, help me help myself, right? Who can I put around me that can make my life easier, right? Because you talked about the run game issues. I think Colorado has never shown, at least under Coach Prime, has not shown a willingness to commit to the run, despite how much they talk about it. It's like they'll run the ball 3 or 5 times in a quarter, and then it's like, okay, we got to throw the ball 13 times straight right here. Like, we have to. Like, that is what we have to do. And it's like, you don't, though. You could continue running the ball. I also think the game management stuff has been an issue as well. The Georgia Tech game I put together a whole thread on X where it was like, you wasted a minute and a half to end up throwing a 60-yard Hail Mary, when in reality, you probably could have used that minute to get closer, call a timeout, do this. And I think there's game management stuff that can be easily improved on. Analytics stuff like hiring. I know a lot of programs have done this. I think Notre Dame is one of the more famous ones right now, where they have an analytics guy where it's like, okay, it's 3rd and 5. Yeah, we're going for it. Or it's 4th and 2 at our own 20. Well, statistically, it says we should do this, right? I think that should be something that's embraced as well. And I think there's a perfect marriage between Coach Prime's sort of like mentality of like, we could be better than everyone, but you have to have the people around you to help that come to fruition.
Well, a wise leader consults, a wise man consults, to your point, and is open to other opinions. So Coach Prime has often said this season, oh, I got it figured out. I know what we're going to do. I know how to fix this. I know what buttons to push. It hasn't showed up on the field. So you need to spend some time looking at the man in the mirror this offseason and realize that maybe you don't have the answers, and to consult with a Nick Saban or someone else who's got far more experience than you. The interview process to become one of Nick Saban's coaches or one of his analysts is legendary. 8-10-hour interview processes. Oh. So if you're going to, Nick Saban just doesn't hire a coach. There's that. And then you got to meet Miss Terry. And Miss Terry gets the final say-so.
She runs the house. We all saw the video the other day when she told him to sit up. She runs it over there.
Yes. So this is not me making this up. This is part of the process. So Miss Terry needs to understand your personality, see how well you're going to mesh with Nick. Because if you're going to spend all these hours together every day for 6 months straight, yeah, you might want to know who this person's personality is. So there's just got to be a more in-depth process going on up in Boulder. There is no fast forwarding to winning in college football. There's no microwaving yourself into a good football team. There is a clearly established path and process to this. And thinking you're going to skip parts of it, that you're smarter than everyone else and can just quickly do this, it's just doesn't line up with reality of how the best teams get it done. And so whether we're talking about clock management, whether we're talking about staff construction, or whether we're talking about building the roster, there's no way to cheat your way through this. You have to put in the work, and it's hard and it's difficult. And I'm not sure if that is being exercised enough up in Boulder.
Yeah, I think that'll be after the season's over and Deion Sanders assesses everything. I think he's going to have to really assess if he wants to do that, right? That's sort of he's got a lot of health problems, or has had a lot of health problems. I don't want to change the wording there, but he's had some health problems in the past. He sort of is getting and understanding how difficult it can be. It's going to have to really come down to, am I committed to putting in the legwork and the brunt work to like really making this a college football program, or am I going to take a whack, because they have to bring in a lot of transfers next year anyway. They have 38 seniors on this team, so they're going to have to bring in a ton of new guys anyway. Am I going to just try to bring in 40, 50 new guys every year and just be like, this year we're great, last year we're all right? Like, is that going to be a thing? We'll have to wait and find out. But Chad, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, coming on the show. Tell the people what you're working on, right? You're calling games. You're busy out there.
Yeah, so I am calling games for Compass Media. So every weekend I'm doing an NFL or a college game. This week I've got LSU at Alabama. About a month ago, this was going to be, maybe one of the best matchups of the year. Obviously, things have kind of gone poorly for LSU over the last couple of weeks. It's always a treat to do a game at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama is one of the top teams in the country, so at least we get an opportunity to see where they are and how they are progressing. I had them against Tennessee about a month ago. So, yeah, I'm doing games almost every weekend. I got the Cleveland Browns-Ravens game coming up on the 16th. Could that possibly be Shadour's first start for the Cleveland Browns? So that'll be interesting of itself. I've got the Big Ten Championship coming up early in December. That'll be an outstanding matchup. At this point, it seems like it's likely going to be Ohio State and Indiana, which could be it could be an amazing game. So, yeah, I've got some exciting games coming up. And then, yes, I'm always talking football into a camera or microphone someplace around the, on the radio dial or on the internet. And in fact, you can check me out tonight on Guerrilla Sports doing the Broncos post game after their Thursday night game tonight against the Raiders.
He's Chad Brown. He's a Colorado legend. He's probably the busiest man in football, it seems. So appreciate you hopping on, Chad. I'm Kevin Borba. This has been Locked On Buffs. I'm less busy than Chad, but I'm also all over the place. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.